Hi, I'm Dave Brewster. I'm the Chief Legal and Safety Officer at Coles Group Limited. I've held that role for about 7 years now. I'm going to be speaking at the Legal Counsel Summit on the 29th of March in relation to ethical sourcing type issues. In terms of my role at Coles, it's a dual role, Chief Legal Officer and Chief Safety Officer. In terms of what that looks like and I guess some of the challenges with the role, a lot of other functions actually sit below me. So I look after the whole corporate legal function as Chief Legal Officer, but also compliance. And there's a whole range of licensing and other compliance issues with a company like Coles. Risk sits under me, ethical sourcing sits under me, corporate business protection, which is fraud prevention, sits under me as well. Industrial relations, I also look after as well. And so that's a kind of broad portfolio, which kind of sits under the Chief Legal Officer side of things. And then on the safety side of things, it's all of our team member safety. So that's our upstream supply chain, so our distribution centres and transport related activities, as well as everything in store and our Coles online fleet, so home delivery. So it's a pretty broad portfolio. In terms of what are the challenges, I guess it comes with the task of being such a diversified business. Is there's a lot of different things at Coles, and I mean, often we say that almost every career, other than potentially in the medical field, that exists in society, in some way or another, there are those jobs at Coles. We have people in a whole range of things like buying energy, buying solar panels, insurance. There's a whole range of stuff. So it's a broad business. And so when you think about all the legal issues that can arise in a business that broad, as well as all the safety issues that can arise, I guess one of the challenges is just the breadth of it. It's big. And retail's a really fast-moving industry. A lot of industries are subject to massive change at the moment, but retail in particular has always moved fast. It's always been a very dynamic industry. So it's like that on steroids at the moment. And so I guess one of the challenges is a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff changing very quickly, and just adapting to that change. And I guess when you get to the executive ranks, there's a lot of stuff that you have to look at, but then not look at because something bigger has arisen quite quickly. And that sort of changing of focus and that ability to pivot between what really matters and what doesn't matter, that's been a learning experience, actually, because I came from private practice as a partner in a big law firm. And there you would have, usually quite a few big files, but that was kind of what you were working on. Whereas when you have a role as broad as mine here, you're constantly just spinning from one thing to another. I guess in terms of the governance priorities going forward for this year, there are two really, big ones that I've got my eyes on. So the first one is sustainability, and every business in Australia would be looking at what they're doing from a sustainability perspective. And there's there's reporting obligations too for companies that are listed in terms of reports that you've got to give in relation to the impact of climate change on your operations. So from a governance perspective, what we're looking at there's two kind of main areas we look at. There's the things we are saying about sustainability to make sure that they're accurate and they're not misleading. So in terms of, products we might sell or marketing type claims in relation to environmental characteristics of products, that's important. And it's obviously something that regulators are looking very, very closely at. And then there's the reporting side of things, which again goes to what are we telling our shareholders, what are we telling the market about our sustainability program. So that's from a governance perspective, they're the kind of two big things there. I guess some of the key considerations that are top of mind for me there is we've been on a journey over the last 4 years in this space. I think it's fair to say that, Coles had an ethical sourcing program for over a decade in terms of making sure and seeking to ensure that our supply chains upstream don't involve worker exploitation. And that could be issues like underpayment of workers. It could be inappropriate safety on site. So when workers are working in the fields, picking, or in packing houses, that they're not fire safe, that they don't have proper hot weather protection and hydration, or, clean facilities. There's a whole range of things that go into ethical sourcing, as well as preventing things like child labour, for example, forced labour and bondage, which is usually an issue more in global supply chains, where you have people who are working in the factories and they're effectively tied to the factory because their passports have been taken away. They have debts that they owe the factory they've got to pay off, those sorts of things. So it's really, really important stuff, but it's only in the last, 4 years we've really accelerated the program in terms of the resources we've applied and the scope. And so in terms of key priorities for people to look at, that's something important, is how much resource you've got in this area. And we have quadrupled probably the number of people we've got working in this space over the last 4 years. And also the scope of the program, because basically everything a company does, at some point, there's stuff in their supply chains they need to look at. We started out looking at the products people buy in our stores and making sure that workers who contributed to the products that our customers were buying, that there wasn't exploitation in those supply chains. But we've now expanded that into things like, where do we get our solar panels from that are on our store roofs? Because there's issues with China, and where a lot of the polysilica actually comes from an area in China, that there's some human rights issues. So we've expanded it, and that's big for most companies, is getting their head around the scope of their program. And then another thing we've really focused on is just, what does the program actually involve? Because most modern slavery ethical sourcing programs are audit-based, and people get suppliers to do audits, which are self-assessments, and the supplier is almost marketing their own homework. And they do these audits, and you give them a risk ranking in terms of how risky their supply chain is for worker exploitation or other illegal conduct. But the self-assessment audit is pretty limited as a vehicle to actually really identify bad stuff going on in supply chains. So something Coles has done is we've been partnering with 3 of the largest trade unions in Australia. So the Shopkeepers Union, the Transport Workers Union, and the Australian Workers Union. We've got an alliance where we hold worker education seminars in regional areas in Australia. We have whistleblowing lines to try and get direct complaints from the workforce, rather than it being found in an audit process where people can phone up directly, either the union or Coles, and they can have a voice about anything that isn't proper going on in the work site. So that's something we've really focused on, because we recognise the audit process just isn't enough to really identify illegal practices. Yeah, so there's some of the big things we've been focusing on.